The big hand has hit the 12 and the little hand is on 7. Or if you have a digital phone, it's 7 o'clock. So we'll call the meeting to order. First order of business are public comments. Prior to starting the public comments, I will let the board know that we did set up a PA for the audience members. These microphones are what we call hot, so they're always on. If, for whatever reason, you need to have a conversation or wish to not be heard, make sure you press down the push button. That will shut your mic off. Otherwise, you are broadcasting out to not only TV, but also your audience. So I just let you know that when we're only on TV and we don't have the PA set up, that's typically not an issue. But otherwise, hopefully, it's broadcasting enough so that folks can hear. This is a stopgap for us while we get our other system installed into the library. But I wanted just to share that with everyone. So moving on, are there any folks signed up for public comments?
Yep. Ian Spencer.
Okay, Ian Spencer. If you can come up to the podium, please. State your name. We know who you are, where you're from. And if you can keep your comments to 3 minutes or less, that would be wonderful.
How you doing? I'm Ian Spencer. I live in Richmond. Head of operations in a school over in Vermont, and I have 2 kids currently in Gilsum. They were in Mount Caesar, but the atmosphere there was bad enough that we chose to home that school them for a year. And due to life changes and job changes, we had to put them back in school, and thank God we found out about Gilsum and put them there, because they are both excelling there where they were borderline failing at Mount Caesar. And we dealt with daily crying fits to get our kids into the school building. And a lot of people give a lot of reasons to that. And I know from my understanding of schools from the inside and out, a lot of it is just the culture. And it is definitely at Mount Caesar. I've seen a fair amount of it at Cutler, and I know it's through the high school and middle school. And I think a lot of that has to do with finances. Everybody's worried about taxes. I am too. I pay taxes in this town, in these towns, in this district, and it affects me greatly. But you cannot be effective, and teachers cannot be effective when they're worried about who's on the chopping block next. I don't think that there's a significant amount of the staff in this entire district that isn't worried about their job. Gilsum, we worry about the whole school, which is even worse. But up there, they are fighting and managing to keep an atmosphere where education can be effective. You look at the test scores, it proves it. Why? Because you have a culture and a program that allows kids to learn. You look at the rest of this district, the test scores are lower. The percentages of IEP students are not lower at Gilsum. It is not attributed to the, quote, average intelligence of the kids. It's the teaching methods being used and the people using them. I work with some people who are ex-employees of this district, and I understand why they had a hard time here, because they were afraid for their jobs. Everything was always cut. Everyone is totally over-labored. And it's hard to be effective. I don't care what your job is, whether you're a teacher, whether you're a janitor here, or whether you work in a totally different field in the world. If you have too much to do and you're worried about losing your job when you know you can't be truly effective at your job because you're overburdened, you're not going to do your best. Whether you want to or not almost becomes a relative at a certain point. And I just think that the mentality of cut is not the way to solve the problem. If you spend more money and improve the education system in this district, you'll have a larger tax base where the per person tax rate will drop, or the per household tax rate will drop. Everybody is running from this district right now, myself included. As soon as my kids can't be in Gilsum, I'm moving one way or the other, because I can no longer homeschool and I can't afford. And unless this district does something to drastically change the culture in its schools, you're going to just keep facing the same problems, only worse and worse and worse. You can't even get substitutes half the time, because they all know it's a hellacious job to walk into one of these classrooms that are overloaded. The general staff is unassistant because they're overburdened with their own issues. They can't try and help the sub out or be courteous to them or take time to make sure that they know what's going on or where they're at or where they need to be, because they've got too much on their own plate. So now you have classes without subs that are getting split up into other classrooms. And I mean, I may not be an educator, but I have a little bit of logic, and it doesn't take much to see that that's not productive for education or the students or the staff for that matter. So I just think the mentality has got to change from cut everything to figure out how to wisely invest in the education system to make it better in this district. Because it's going downhill, and it has been since my kids have been in school. The only spot of light this district has at all is Gilsum. And that's always on the chopping block and always the next thing threatened. That's all I got.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Yep, Season Smith.
And if you can let us know who you are and where you're from,
I can
and keep your comments to 3 minutes or so, that would be great.
I can try. My name is Season Smith, and I live in Swansea. I am going to read because I won't lie, I'm nervous. So I sent my third grader to Gilsum. I can't express to you enough the decision that we made to accept a spot at Gilsum in the summer of 2014, as opposed to going to the local charter school, was the best decision that we made. It's a perfect fit for our family. Our decision was based on 3 things: the numbers of kids in the school, the beautiful facility, and the principal, Adrian. So let me take a minute to thank each and every one of you for the hard work that you do every day. I cannot imagine what it takes to negotiate all the moving parts in this district, so I appreciate it. That being said, I'd like to charge you as our school board with 3 things. I'd love to have our school board consider Gilsum an asset to our district, use the culture, the program, and the team as a role model for other schools here. I'd also like to see the district not be so heavy and having to put out fires all the time. Instead, having the decision makers in our district take the time to learn from the past, guide us into a successful future that is sustainable for each child and family. And last, I'd really like the board to take a hard look at why our enrollment is down so low right now. Why don't new families come into our district? Why do families who live here send their kids to private schools or homeschool them? Why do families leave our districts just when their kids are coming of school age? Like, this is important stuff to think about. We need our towns and our schools to be places where young families want to come and live and raise their families. We need to add youth and energy and viability to our communities. I deeply believe in school choice and have been honored to have been part of the Gilsum STEAM Academy for 2.5 years. I look forward to seeing it grow, seeing our kids flourish, and having a more cohesive district that doesn't point fingers one way or another, but holds out a helping hand instead to see that all of our kids, district-wide, get the education and opportunity they deserve. Thanks.
Thank you. And good job keeping it under 3 minutes. Anyone else?
Rebecca Lazo.
Hi, I'm Rebecca. I live in Swansea. My 2 little girls go to Gilsum. My oldest daughter, Abigail, just started this year. She did go to Mount Caesar for kindergarten, 1st grade. I just wanted to share a little bit about my experience at Mount Caesar and in Gilsum, and just kind of point out the need for that alternative education. Abigail started in kindergarten, a very happy-go-lucky little girl and very excited to learn. But as soon as she got there, something changed, and she begged every day not to go to school, and her stomach problems started increasing in nature, where I was in Lebanon every day, not every day, but I was in Lebanon all of the time trying to figure out if there was something more to her stomach issues. It ended up in first grade where she was throwing up every day in school. It was pretty traumatic and awful. I started working at Gilsum STEAM Academy when Abigail was in first grade, and just saw the love and compassion and the opportunities that the children had, and the hands-on experiences and the different culture. I opted for my children to go there this year, and it's been night and day, really, for Abigail. She's thriving, and instead of saying that she hates going to school every day, she's saying that this feels like home and that she loves it. I don't think it's just because it's a smaller school. I think it's that she's able to learn at her level. The classrooms are very fluid. She's able to go down to the first grade classroom and learn with them and move where she needs to be, and it's not, it's a different setting. And I don't think that everyone can learn in the mainstream classroom. I don't think that it's for everyone. I don't think that we can just close everyone out and say, okay, you all go here and learn. It's just not going to work for everyone, and we definitely need to have alternatives if we're going to be giving our students an appropriate education, and I hope that's what we're all striving to do, obviously, is give our kids an appropriate education. And I just feel like we need to be focusing more on those things instead of our pockets, and I know that's a big thing. Trust me, I get it. I pay taxes, and it's not fun, but we have to focus on trying to bring kids in and giving them what they need and being compliant. And, my child's now receiving special education services, and those are the things that we need to be focusing on. So, thanks.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Yep. Hannah Royal.
Hello again, I'm Pana Royal, resident of Swansea. I also wrote something down so that I would try not to repeat myself too often. I will try to condense it and keep it to 3 minutes. My son also attends Gilsum STEAM. He went to a Montessori preschool, and we were primarily looking at private school options. We're not strangers to paying tuition, but after looking at multiple private options and including public options, the meeting at Gilsum with Adrian and the tour sealed the deal for us. He fell in love with the school and with the staff up there. Our son, as I'd mentioned before, has been diagnosed with autism. It's not an intellectual disability, it's actually more social and behavioral. And the environment at Gilsum very closely mirrors the Montessori school that he came from. The mixed age classrooms, the fluidity, as Rebecca mentioned, being able to move between classrooms. He's reading at a higher grade level, and they're able to accommodate that. They have the flexibility to make that happen. In our view, children do not all learn at the same pace, and GSA's program allows students to learn at their current skill set, not to feel badly about themselves because they are either behind for reading in first grade or in math. Those things. The hands-on project-based approach, integrating all the subjects, is meaningful to the students because they can apply it in real-world ways. And that's exactly how adults learn once we're in the workforce. So instilling that in our students from a very early age can only be beneficial to them in the long run. I would like to say that GSA is the only elementary school in the state of New Hampshire that has a STEAM program. There are other schools on the other side of the state that do upper elementary STEAM, but no one is implementing it between K to 3. I feel like that we should be able to blueprint this and not just be an asset for the district, but possibly for the entire state. as they look to move that way. I read some STEAM task force reports with the Department of Education, and they're looking to go in that direction and start STEAM education earlier. Why can't Monadnock be a champion for that? The one thing that I have heard is about tuitioning students in. In doing research and coming up with contingency plans if Gilsum does close, my husband and I have discussed moving out of Swansea, moving to Peterborough for Conval School District. In the interim, before we're able to do that, we can tuition into Conval at 40% of their tuition rate. I guess my question to the board for consideration is, currently the per pupil cost is $16,404. Is it at all possible to reduce that tuition rate based on economies of scale? If there's open positions, is there anything that we can take into consideration to potentially bring students in from outside the district at a lower tuition rate? And to echo something Susan said, thank you for your time, not just tonight, but for every night. Everything that you do for the students in this district and the staff in the district. I cannot imagine what it is to sit in the seats that you're sitting in and have to be faced with making the decisions that you're making, knowing all of the lives that are being impacted. Thank you.
Thank you. Laura, anyone else?
Yes, Melissa Diven.
Hi, everybody. Melissa Diven, Swansea. I've been asked by a peer of mine to read something to you. I'm a concerned teacher, parent, and Gilsum resident. I desperately want to stand up for our school in hopes that it will be able to continue as a shining example of what the rest of the Monadnock Regional School District can aspire to be. I understand the need to save money, but I feel deeply that closing the school would be a mistake. The STEAM Academy stands for everything a school should be, and not only serves as an alternative in our district for those students who learn differently, but offers our children an environment where students want to learn and contribute to their school community. This climate is not seen in the other schools and should be maintained and nurtured, not stifled or eliminated entirely. We should hold this school up as the gem it is in our district. This year, our growing family was faced with the decision to move or to put an addition onto our house. When we heard that Gilsum School was given 5 years, we decided to stay so our children could attend as long as they could. Recently, we put the construction on hold as we found out the ruling could be overturned and Gilsum could be closed. I can tell you, it is with certainty that we will move out of the district if the STEAM Academy closes. Our child loves his school and the sense of family that exists there. He loves the hands-on learning that takes place and the value that is placed on the education that is offered. This is the school that Monadnock can rely on to offer an education that is not mainstream. This should be looked at as an asset, not a liability. I know that I'm not alone when it comes to wanting to leave the district if the school indeed closes. Gilsum residents are passionate about this school, as are the parents from out of town who send their kids here. We see firsthand the benefits of the school each and every day when our children come home. We ask you to please come for a visit. See for yourself before considering to make such an important decision that could be so greatly impact all of us. Thank you for your time. I also wanted to make a statement, not entirely about Gilsum. I attended a meeting on Tuesday night, and I was called out for something in front of a whole room full of people that I thought was pretty unprofessionally handled by a board member. I wrote to this board member and did not receive a reply. I wrote an email to this board member and did not receive a reply. I also looked at something that you all sign before you become board members, and that is to treat each other professionally and to treat the public with professional respect. If I were someone else and had been treated the way I was, I would not ever come back to one of these meetings. And I guess I'm lucky I'm who I am, so I'm back. But someone else would have probably left quite upset. I take responsibility for whatever this person thought I was doing wrong. I had my dog with me. We had just come from the vet, and I didn't have time to bring my dog home in between coming here, or being at the vet and coming here. This dog has been in this building many, many times before. I guess my point is, if you're going to sign something that says treat one another with respect, when I did start to speak about Gilsum at this meeting, I was met with eye rolls, heavy sighs, and this person turned his back on me while I was talking. I hope to never, at another meeting, regardless of whether it's a board meeting or a committee meeting, be treated in such a manner. Thank you.
Melissa, you read a letter. Did you mention who wrote that letter? Thank you.
Thank you. That was my next question. Anyone else, Laura?
Yes. Pat Boris.
And if you haven't heard, when the little chime goes off, that's the 3-minute timer. So obviously I'm giving a little bit of leeway, but just understand that.
Good evening. I did attend the Finance Committee meeting last week, and it was a long and tenacious discussion, which we go through every year in this district, about how we're going to save money. And it always comes up to closing Gilsum School. But the administration brought forth to the Finance Committee numerous options as to how to reach the $1.5 million reduction in the proposed budget, some of which left all schools open, some of which closed Gilsum School, some of which doubled up on classrooms in Troy and Fitzwilliam. At the end of the meeting, I believe there were 2 proposals that will be brought forth to you this evening. One of them reduces the extracurricular activity programs more than the other. That was the one that was proposed by the administration. And it does double up on classrooms in Troy, which takes us from 19 to 24 students. Oh, excuse me. It takes us from 19 to 24 students to 21 to 26 students. You want to do this and maintain a culture that we're hearing this evening the public does not believe is there. You're overburdening teachers. You're taking away the opportunity for students to learn and grow. Another proposal that you're going to receive this evening, I believe it's Budget C, okay, does propose some multi-grades, but it doesn't reconfigure any of the classrooms in Troy. It doesn't close Gilsum. What it does do is not reduce, or it does reduce the extracurricular activities by more than the first option that I presented to you. As the Board of Education, I know that it's a difficult situation to be in. Your main focus has to be on the students. I urge you to think of the students before you make a decision. I know that this board is very heavily involved in extracurricular activities, but your responsibility is to educate students. You need to put that first. Teachers need to be able to have control of their classrooms. They don't need to have double classrooms. They don't need to reconfigure classrooms, and you certainly don't need to close schools. So please, think hard and long about where your cuts will be. And as I've heard before, use a scalpel, not an axe when you're thinking about these cuts. You know that the public needs to have the cuts. With a 17% increase in Troy, 14% in Fitzwilliam, and 14% in Swansea in the tax bill, this is something that has to be grabbed onto right now and taken care of for years to come. There are things in your budget, things in your warrant articles that really are nice wish lists, but really are not suitable for a district such as Monadnock. We must think students and education first. I would encourage this board to think hard and long regarding the teacher's contract. I know that they try and believe that they're thinking of students first. But last school board meeting, when I heard the administration state that a hearing that took place in November 8th, will probably not have a decision until after, possibly after, the deliberative session, I find that unacceptable. The MDEA has already received over $200,000 to give them 100% coverage in their insurance last year, even though they did not get a new contract. This year, they still have a new contract put out there, and I would like to see them get a contract, but they will not get $300,000 more and a contract too. It would behoove them to come forward and say, we will drop the case if the board goes ahead and promotes the contract. The public will not accept both. And it's a sad situation for us all to be in. Thank you.
Thank you. Or anyone else?
Yep. Brian Bohannon.
Good evening. My name is Brian Bohannon, Swansea resident, born and raised. My wife and I live on Stonefield Lane here in town. We have two daughters. One attends Mount Caesar, the other attends Cutler. I'd like to think they're extremely smart. First off, I'd like to thank you guys. We are a much different district than we were even 2 years ago. We have put a lot of time. I know the board members have put a lot of time into making that effort in affecting change, so I appreciate that, both as a father and a parent. We have a lot of things to do, I believe, but we have made a lot of progress. And again, I can't stress enough my appreciation for that. I want to speak strictly to the two proposals that you guys will see tonight, put forth by the Finance Committee. And I want to make sure that you understand the amount of work that you're trying to put on teachers in multi-grade classrooms. My wife was a teacher for 12 years in elementary school. It was not uncommon for her to be up until 9 or 10 o'clock planning just in a single grade. So to ask teachers to teach 2 grade levels in one classroom, I can't imagine the amount of work that would go in. You know, I didn't experience that from my perspective as far as Kim was teaching, but that's a lot of work. You know, speaking to her, I can't imagine. Neither one of my girls can get direct reading instruction every day in a single grade, so I don't see that happening in a multi-grade level. So I just, you know, I want to make sure that we achieve, you know, what we set forth and add value in fair and equitable education. There is a report out that states that we have too many buildings, and consolidation allows us to leverage leveling classrooms out to the number which we put forth as a board in the district. So I would hate to see that already taken off the table with proposals that propose raising class sizes to a number that we haven't seen before in the district in a very long time and almost go backwards. So again, I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there anyone else?
Yeah, Courtney Davis.
How many more people do we have
That would be
signed?
the last one.
Okay,
So, yeah.
okay. So Courtney's not here, and we are 15 minutes over our allotted time. So I would ask if anyone in the public that hasn't signed up wishes to make a public comment, that you hold that for the next, are you going to stay for the full meeting?
Can I have 30 seconds?
You may have 30 seconds.
Alan Bailey, Troy Selectman. I'd like to thank the board for making it possible for us to hear what's going on. I'm looking forward to hearing every word of what promises to be an exciting meeting. But in order for it to work, you have to speak into the microphones. Right now, these mics are on the forward edges of the table. Before you speak, please pull those microphones towards you. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, with that, we will move on to the next order of business on the agenda, which is the draft warrant articles. I'm not sure that we have any more to add to this discussion, but Jane, I would pass the mic figuratively over to you.
Mike, the only changes that I have made at this point was based on the board vote at the last meeting to remove the warrant article regarding the provision of lunches for the high school, middle school.
Okay.
Or breakfast, sorry. And that's been it, other than to change it to draft number 3.
Thank you. Okay. And we do have a new copy. This is draft 3 of the warrant articles that are being passed out. I don't believe at this time we would be taking any action, as we haven't finalized any of these warrant articles, and would be doing so in early January, if I'm correct in my assessment.
We would, I would ask if any board member has additional warrant articles that they would like to see on here, that they can submit them to Lisa and I so that we can get them out to you prior to the next meeting for consideration.
Okay.
It just makes it easier because each warrant article I have to load up to the state, and they have to go through to make sure the wording is correct as far as what needs to go to the voters.
Okay.
Okay, and that just affords me the time to be able to do that.
Okay. So if there are any additional warrant articles that the board would be putting forward, I want to make sure that we get that into the queue. But again, we would be looking at our meeting in early January to finalize these so that we're in time for the deadline, which is the 13th of January?
10th, I believe.
10th?
Second
Okay.
Tuesday.
Second Tuesday. So yes, that's the 10th. It just always happens to be right around my birthday. It's such a great birthday present. So we'll want to do that. We will be moving these warrant articles in our January 5th meeting. I believe it's January 5th or 3rd. I apologize. My dates are all messed up right now. So the 3rd. So, take a look at them. Like we said, they haven't changed much, other than the removal of that one warrant article from our last meeting. And as we continue to work through the budget discussion, we'll continue to solidify that. The next item are the CRC committee motions. It was brought forward by CRC at the last meeting, but we would be looking for a formal motion from CRC. And as the chair of CRC is here, at the board meeting, I would have the chair of CRC make these motions.
I appreciate that, Mike, but I have not been in attendance for all of the CRC meetings, so I've asked Freddie Patriot to speak on my behalf.
Perfect, thank you.
Letter I, the first motion, is to authorize the CRC to create and edit, if needed, after the deliberative session, warrant articles in plain English. We've done this over the past few years, but we just want to keep the board in the loop and have your blessings to go ahead and do that.
It's been moved. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Nick?
Yeah, I'm just, the only thing I want to be clear about is that these are going to come to the full board for approval first?
Yes, they always come to the board for approval first, prior to the deliberative session. If any of the warrant articles are modified by a vote during the deliberative session, this authorizes the committee to then provide an appropriate edit to those plain English statements.
So just to be clear, after you come up with these plain English descriptions, they will come before the board for approval?
Yes.
Correct.
Thank you.
And then the second motion
Hold
is,
on. We have to vote on that one
oh,
first.
sorry.
Any further discussion? Jim?
Yeah, I would just say, I think that both of these are rather unnecessary from the standpoint of the school board. I think our public is perfectly able and willing to read warrant articles. And I think the warrant articles should be phrased in plain English to begin with. So I'm more concerned about the possibility of spin going out there as opposed to plain English, and I think that's a big concern of mine. So I think in both cases, this is part of the problem. The school board should not be entering into taking positions on any warrant articles, nor should the language even border on that. That's not the role of the school board, particularly with regards to warrant articles, so I would oppose both of them.
Any further discussion? I'm just going to share that historically, the school board has, in the past, has delivered the green sheets. If any of you have lived in the district long enough to remember the green sheets, because unfortunately, not every member of the public comes to the meetings, nor reads our minutes, nor watches the fine video by Cheshire TV. So sometimes they're not clear, and I just share that historical perspective. So seeing no further discussion, we'll take a roll call vote. Jane?
Phyllis?
Yes.
Winston?
Yes.
Karen?
Yes.
Jim?
No.
Nick?
Yes.
Michael?
Yeah.
Cheryl?
Yes.
Bob?
Yes.
Robert?
Yes.
Eric?
Yes.
Betty?
Yes.
Scott?
Yes.
Lisa?
Yes.
11.925 yes, 1.075 no. Nobody is absent. Motion passes.
Okay. Moving on to the second motion.
To authorize the CRC, Community Relations Committee, to create and develop talking points for warrant articles. And the talking points would just be factual. We're not trying to spin anything, but just when we go out and do presentations about the budget, we feel we should have the same script. And so we'd like to develop it. And there again, share it with the board.
Okay. It's been moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Moved and seconded. Discussion? Nick?
Can you give us just a brief explanation about the differences between these two? So the first one was plain English, and then the second is a listing of facts. Do I have that?
I anticipate they'd be very similar. The one in plain English is primarily for the sheet that goes in the paper for people to read. This would be talking points for people that might either go out and speak to groups or something like that about the warrants.
Any further
But I see
discussion?
the content is very similar.
When,
Yes, the school board has to recommend or not recommend on these warrant articles before it goes to press. And this would help explain some of the warrant articles if we are in favor of it. And also, there were times when we're not in favor of certain articles to help the public understand how we voted. And that's all I'm worried about. I'm not worried about whether they can read plain English or not. I think they can.
okay. Back to Nick.
Yeah, but provided these are, again, reviewed by the board for approval, I would actually like to see, if we're going to have something that goes into that level of detail for the people in our communities to be able to see what percentage or what portion of the board supports those. So if you're going to go into that level of detail, I think that would be another valuable piece of information.
Okay, and Scott?
Another way to understand the difference between these two motions. The first motion that just passed is typically a single paragraph per warrant article, whereas the talking points would be if we ask the administration for specific points of data, if we ask them for a chart or a graph on a particular topic, that we would begin to use a consistent set of information that might go even deeper down into any particular set of detail. And so we're wanting to prepare that, so if we share things with the newspaper, with the radio, with any media outlet, if any one of us are called upon to speak in public at any group, we're all working from the same fact sheet.
Okay.
The one risk that I see in this is that, especially if, hearing your last comment, if you get into a common set of talking points that people on the board are restricted to using, and not having the ability to expand on that's my first concern with it. And my second concern is that you could get into a situation where certain facts are included that support or don't support something, and that don't incorporate the full body of facts. So.
Okay, Karen?
I agree with Nick. My concern would be that if you're including graphs, if you go around the table, we could ask for the same set of information different ways, and it would. I feel this would be very biased. If you ask any one of us sitting here about the current tax structure, for example, and you make a graph of it, you're going to get a different graph. So I'm against this motion.
Okay. Any further discussion? Jim?
Yeah, I'll just reiterate what I said before. I think this leaves grounds for an awful lot of one side versus the other. It's not necessarily objective. It tends to be very subjective. What's a talking point for one person actually might be an opposition statement for another. And I think this is not the role of the board, particularly with regards to warrant articles that the public's voting on. The public has every right to take a look at the warrant articles and make decisions on their own. The board's position should be to put those articles out there and to either, when it comes time to put it on the warrant itself, to state it very clearly whether we either support or don't support those. But to get into putting out documentation that may or may not be supported by a lot of board members, and then to get hemmed in with talking points, it's very subjective, so I'm opposed to this.
Okay, anything further, Bob?
I support the talking point motion. And I think, to Nick's point, I don't think they would be exclusive. I can't see how they would limit speech on anyone's part. But last year, there was a lot of misinformation going around. And I believe that if this is put together by the CRC and approved by the majority of the board, it will be representative, honest, and consistent.
Okay. Betty?
Yep, it's just an effort to try and have everybody hear the same message.
Okay. Rob?
What would happen if it wasn't approved?
We won't do it.
We won't do it? Okay.
Scott?
So to share a little context of how this came up in meeting and why we landed on this motion. In years past, when we've published the warrant articles themselves, the warrant articles in plain English, and we've struggled with lack of attendance from the general public, other than a few very interested folks, and it comes time to vote, there's been a lot of detail that gets passed around verbally, anecdotally, people stating particular facts without stating the whole context, the whole story. So while I appreciate the concerns that the other board members are raising, there's a ditch on both sides of the road, and we've struggled in the past with not sharing enough detail with the public without being more proactive in publishing messages either in the Sentinel or in other mediums to try to, provide that extra clarity. We can continue to go down the road of expecting people to either attend our meetings and read our minutes, or we can let things continue to flare up in social media or in other places. But if we don't proactively provide that extra detail in as many mediums as possible, the real facts and details won't get out there. So the approach was to pick key warrant articles. Let's say there was 3 of them that we really believe we wanted extra facts out there. We would ask the administration to provide those details. CRC would take a first pass at trying to frame them up similar to the warrant articles in plain English. If the board then wants to see them prior to publishing anything, I think that's understandable. We're not trying to spin anything, but we are trying to get more detail out there. And as a CRC committee, we're struggling a little bit with how to be proactive. So if other board members have ideas about this, we'd appreciate your participation in those meetings.
Any further discussion, Phyllis?
I would just like to ask, is this more like a fact sheet or a prescript conversation?
More of a fact sheet.
Jim?
Yeah, I would just like to, I think the response was very interesting coming from Betty, and the comment that was made was the purpose here is to give out the same information. I'm offended by that. I don't think our obligation is necessarily to give out the same information, because in many respects there are many board members here who do not agree with other board members. And when it comes down, then we get into the same situation that we were talking about just a little while ago, about requiring board members to give out the same information. I'm sorry, but I think that the public deserves every board member to be able to speak their piece with regards to information, because there are different ways of interpreting that.
Okay, I have one comment that I would like to make, and then I'll call on Betty. I hear the conversation, the one piece from, because I was part of that CRC discussion and have been challenged with this issue for a number of years of being on CRC and wanting to be proactive of getting information out, is that there's an issue always has 2 sides. And I think it's important that we share that message with the public, that it's not, everything isn't always rosy. There's always an alternative to that, and informing the public as to what the board may support it. The board may support it unanimously or by a majority. But there are alternatives, and I think it's important that the public understands what those alternatives are, that alternative message, whatever that may be. You can call it dissension, it could just be a different point of view. But I think it's important that the public understands both of that, because there may be an instance where we don't support a warrant article, but the public may, or vice versa. And just to have these talking points tell the message that these are the reasons why the board supported it, I don't think that's the intention. I think the intention is these are the facts. These are the facts as to why it may not be 100% supported, if it's not, but these are the reasons why it is supported on one side or another. So I think that, just to be clear, that these fact sheets or information talking points, it isn't just one single message. It's the message of this is what the conversation around this item is, so that the public can be more informed, because these are complex issues. Our public comments, most people said it. We're dealing with complex issues with the education of children, and it's not just 1 + 1. It's exponential variability that has lasting effects on many, many people's lives. So passing as much information along, I think, is helpful. And that at least is my understanding in the discussion that we had as a CRC as to what we wanted to do with regard to this. Betty, anything further?
No, it's okay.
Okay. Any further discussion before we vote? Okay, seeing none, we'll take a roll call vote. Jane?
Phyllis?
I don't know.
Do you want to
I
pass?
guess I'd want to see it, but I don't know. I don't like a prescript.
So is it a yes or a no?
It was a yes?
I'd like to take a look at it, yeah.
Okay. Winston?
Yes.
Karen?
No.
Jim?
No.
Nick?
No.
Michael?
Yes.
Cheryl?
Yes.
Robert?
No.
Bob?
Yes.
Hang on one sec.
And they're sitting next to each other, so.
I know. Eric?
Yes.
Betty?
Yes.
Scott?
Yes.
Lisa?
Yes.
9.833 yes, 3.167 no. Motion passes.
Okay. I don't believe there are any further motions from CRC at this point. So we'll move on to the Finance and Facilities Committee motion, and that is, you should have received in your packet the budget recommendation. And I would turn it over to the chair of the Finance and Facilities Committee. And I know it's a complicated item, and we spent many, many hours talking about this. But if you can give the high-level synopsis as to what that conversation was, that would be helpful.
Was the minutes of our meeting enclosed for everybody? I mean, I got them in my package. I assumed everybody got them.
They are posted. I don't know that everyone read them. There was a majority of the board that was present at that meeting and at the last two meetings, so I think many people are aware of the conversation, but they weren't in the packet that I'm aware of, since they just came out.
I would say that after a long discussion, there were a couple of efforts to move one or two of the proposals that we were given. I think from the standpoint of the public, so that everybody understands, we had received at our prior meeting, I think, either 8 or 9 different variations of the budget. We were asked to take a look at those and to try to come up with one or whatever, to take a look at it and come up with a recommendation. At that first meeting, we did generally come in with a consensus, I would say, as to where the Finance Committee felt that we should look. And that generally was around the area of the $1.5 million variation that we had been given, which was basically level funding. At our last meeting, we had several variations on the $1.5 million proposal. Again, these are not recommendations from the administration. These are basically scenarios that they were asked to present as to, if these cuts were given, what would be the possibilities and how they would be dealt with. So at our meeting, the first situation that we had was it was moved to ask the board to meet with the Budget Committee and the administration on December 31st to discuss the scenarios that were discussed tonight. That was basically passed, and so that was a proposal that was given. Mike said that he would try to get in touch with the chairman of the Budget Committee, and we would try to set that up. I understand that's not been successful, at least that they're not going to meet with us tomorrow night.
That is correct. Wayne Leckleiter, the chair of the Budget Committee, and I spoke the day following that meeting, and it was determined that the Budget Committee's agenda was too lengthy and had many items on it that the chairman suggested that we choose an alternate date. I did try to recommend that we do it on that same meeting night, But again, the concern that he shared was we wouldn't be able to enter in that conversation until well past probably 9 o'clock at night. So the solution was to propose December 28th as a joint meeting date. I know not all the administration will be able to attend. Specifically, I know our superintendent will not be able to attend due to the holiday break. However, that is a suggested date. If the school board wishes to suggest a different date past the new year, we can do so, but we're getting pretty close to that January 10th deadline.
What was that, Mike? 28th?
28th.
7 o'clock.
Here?
We would propose 7 o'clock.
Here?
Here, if we can.
Are you making that in the form of a motion for a discussion?
I'm the chair, I can't do that. But I would, if someone would like to do that, I would definitely recognize it.
You're looking for a motion for the to meet that night?
Yeah, I would be looking for a motion to conduct a joint meeting between the Budget Committee and the school board to meet on December 28th at 7 o'clock.
So moved.
To discuss the budget.
So moved.
Moved and
Yes.
seconded. Any further discussion? Yep.
There's
Jim?
been no discussion yet of that. I would not be in favor of that. I would have hoped that we could have got this proposal at least to the Budget Committee in a timely fashion. We get into the 28th of December, right before budget hearings, and we've been pushing in the Finance Committee to try to get this forwarded for a number of weeks. And for one thing, I think it gets right into between Christmas and New Year's. A lot of people are not going to be present. I'm not sure if the administration's going to be present either. I think that it'd be better at this point in time to go forward with what we had suggested here in the second part of the motion, which had been presented here as our alternative, what the Finance Committee had come up with as a recommendation to the Budget Committee. And I think that in the end, the Budget Committee is going to do what the Budget Committee wants to do anyway. So as far as I'm concerned, at this point in time, from the standpoint of the Finance Committee, I think we should make the recommendation that came forward from the Finance Committee, make it to the full board, let the full board decide whether they want to support that recommendation or not, and go forward from there. But just putting this off to the 28th, you know, we've been put off for the last month and a half, actually 2 months, on this whole budget, and I'm very frustrated at this point.
Okay, we're under discussion of the motion, and to be clear that, to my knowledge, the Budget Committee will have received, if they haven't already received, and Wayne Lecklider, the chair of the Budget Committee, informed me that he was going to be hand distributing these proposed budgets to the Budget Committee members. I assume he has done so. I haven't spoken to him since then. So they will have seen what we have in front of us, as well as the recommendation from the administration, and I expect that they will have probably a lengthy conversation tomorrow evening with regard to this as well. And I know that they're aware of what the recommendation from the Finance and Facilities Committee is. All I can say is I tried to be persuasive, but their agenda was already full. Nick?
Just to be clear with this motion, I don't believe I heard you say it when I moved it. We would not, as a board, be recommending any of these at this point. The Finance Committee has their recommendation. We would then discuss these things with the Budget Committee.
That's correct. Okay, any further discussion about a joint meeting? Seeing none. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed?
No.
We have Wynn and Phyllis, no. And abstain?
Can we do a roll call on that? So,
Okay. We'll revote with a roll call, please, Jane, since there was some confusion.
Phyllis?
No.
Winston?
No.
Karen?
Yes.
Jim?
No.
Nick?
Yes.
Michael?
Yeah.
Cheryl?
Yes.
Bob?
Yes.
Robert?
Yes.
Eric?
Yes.
Betty?
Yes.
Scott?
Yes.
Lisa?
Yes.
9.696 yes, 3.305 no, motion passes.
Okay, so there will be a joint meeting between the Budget Committee and the school board posted for the 28th at 7 o'clock here in the library. And that is next Wednesday. Hopefully, everyone can attend, understanding it's between Christmas and New Year's. There may be conflicts. I know specifically, like I mentioned, the administration. So we'll do our best and work through that, and then certainly share back our findings if not everyone can attend, and go from there. Is there anything further from Finance and Facilities?
Sure, because the second half of the motion, which was what we were here for, really, was that the motion was made to recommend and forward to the Budget Committee and to the Board to be proposed for the meeting on December 21st, which is now the 28th, that we forward budget level C and budget F as had been proposed, and as we spent our time on taking a look at that, which was the $1.546,500 level budget.
So the motion from Finance and Facilities is to forward level budget C and level budget F, if I'm correct in that,
Yes.
to the Budget Committee, which they are meeting tomorrow, and then we can have further conversation on the 28th. So the motion is to forward a recommendation from Finance and Facilities of the two proposed budgets for their discussion.
Oh, yes, we do.
Did I capture that correctly, Jim?
Well, not quite, because the motion actually was to recommend and to forward level C and budget level F to the Board and the Budget Committee.
Okay. That's the motion. Is there a second? Laura, did you capture that correctly? So it's to recommend and forward to the Budget Committee, level budget C and F. Okay. It's been moved by the Finance and Facilities Committee. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
It's been moved and seconded. Discussion.
Can I make the proposal and have the discussion since it came from the Finance Committee first?
Yeah, I'll grant you that.
The purpose here, I think, was to try to actually find some sort of more middle ground. We had originally received, as I said before, any number of different proposals, a few, I think 2 or 3, that were lower, and at least 2 or 3 that were higher, just in terms of the dollar amounts. When we actually went in at the last meeting, we went in to discuss the kind of middle amount, the 1.546, which again was a level funding situation, and we were given a number of different scenarios with that. In that discussion that took place, as it was mentioned earlier, there were a few recommendations that were made. I don't want to put the administration on the hot spot, but they actually were asked which one of the proposals that were before them that they felt most favorable to, I guess, and they suggested level F. In the discussion after that, there was basically it was brought up that in some respects level C actually was maybe more beneficial to a number of people from the standpoint of what it presented. In both cases, and since we've had a number of people here tonight and from Gilsum, and representing, I think, the position of the STEAM Academy, in neither one of these proposals was Gilsum situation proposed to be cut. There were 2 different proposals. They vary a little bit in terms of multi-grade classrooms. They also varied a little bit in terms of combinations of Emerson and Troy on how we would deal with those two proposals. Overall, I think that the dollar amount to me makes sense. There was a few people who felt that it was too much. I think there were a few people who maybe felt that it wasn't enough. But this was kind of the more of the middle ground, and as I said, it's basically a level funding situation, and it deals with, from the standpoint at least, my perspective, and that's my own personal opinion, I think as it was presented here tonight, I have to support the position that I think Gilsum and the STEAM Academy, as it stands, is one of the more outstanding situations educationally that exist within our district. And I would feel very opposed to a proposal in here, and there were a number of them that were presented, that would close one of the better educational performing areas of this district. So that said, the choices got somewhat limited, and as I presented here, that's the favor, I think, of either budget level C or F. Again, both of those dealing with the number of 1.546, a level, basically a level funded budget.
Okay. Further discussion, Lisa?
Whereas the Budget Committee is concerned primarily with the number and not where the money goes specifically, I would feel more comfortable if we just recommended the number, because personally I'm very uncomfortable with budget level F, because I think that should involve much more study. I think we need to involve the townspeople in Troy and Fitzwilliam. We need to see how that impacts the teachers, the taxpayers, and the parents before we go reconfiguring schools. And if necessary, I'll make a motion later in the meeting to form a study committee about that. But if we were to move forward and recommend just the number, 1,546,500, I'd feel much more comfortable with that.
Okay, further discussion, Eric?
I just have a question. I'm looking at this, and I see one of the things that's on there, and I don't know if we want to get into specifics or not, but one is to remove $50,000 from the budget for the increase of the full-time athletic director. But we already have how much in the budget for the athletic director? So is it truly $50,000 that we're removing?
Yes, because of benefits and New Hampshire state retirement.
So it would be $50,000 even?
About, yes.
Okay, Nick?
Yeah, I'd like to take this, we're going to stay on topic, but in a little different direction. People are talking about making these sorts of cuts and all these different options that we have of where are we going to cut, who are we going to kind of screw over. In the end of it ends up being the kids with all these plans. We got some like 20 different plans on how we're going to start hacking and slash it. That was actually, it was 9 originally, and then there was additional 9 or so that were brought in the last meeting. So it was closer to 20. Originally, the Budget Committee, one of their proposals was almost $5 million. Okay, with no context of what impact that has on the kids in this district or the parents. And for the people who are also in every other aspect of the community, because when you make a sort of cut like that cuts pretty deep. And I think that you would see serious repercussions of that going on decades into the future for those individuals who join the community and have to work based on that sort of education. And so I'm really concerned with that because they gave no, it was just, let's cut this. Here's a number. And so then we moved on to, for the people that want to do these cuts, let's talk about $1.5 million. Why? Oh, well, because we're losing funding, and we're just going to put that onto the kids. So we're just going to hack and slash here to come up with that so that people don't see a significant tax increase in the town. Well, we have a different sort of way of funding schools here, as has been discussed. It does fall onto the local taxpayer significantly. But we've also made decisions at the state and federal level. People have made decisions on where those funds go. And it's decreasing going to the schools. I'm of the opinion that we should proceed forward with not cutting anything. We have a default budget, which would help us in that aim. And even after all of this discussion and the next week's meeting and people running around and changing plans around vacation, we're going to have this discussion with the Budget Committee, and they're going to have one position and we're going to have another. I'm assuming, because I've spoken to another number of people on the board. And it's going to come to the deliberative session. And I think it's going to come down to the public who show up, because you're going to have the option of whatever budget we come up with the Budget Committee of adjusting that. And it can be adjusted, I believe, 10%. Is that correct?
10% up.
It can be raised, it can be reduced by any amount.
So it can go up 10%. So if after all of this rigmarole, I think it's really actually going to come down to the deliberative session. It's going to be important for everybody to show up, because if the Budget Committee and the board say they vote to cut, I believe it's 4%, 3.6% would be the 1.5 million. Does that sound close? Is it 3 point?
Over the
The 1.5 million cut?
It's 4.92 over the proposed, or under the proposed, about 3%.
I think you're going to have
On the current
a significant number of people in the community who are going to recommend that we increase whatever budget that the board and the school board and the Budget Committee come up with. It's going to be either increased or decreased by that amount. So I think that's really what's going to happen. People are going to have to show up. And I'm not personally in favor of recommending this. I think it's a race to the bottom.
Lisa?
I just want to make sure I understand here where it says certified positions on budget level C. It says -2, 150. That means we're adding 2 certified teachers at the elementary level versus taking away 2 for budget level F.
Correct.
Okay.
Eric?
I echo what Nick just said. However, I appreciate all the work that the Finance Committee has done. I appreciate all the work the administrators have done, but I'd like to ask them to do some more work. I'd like to see a budget based on 31,900,000. 31,900,000. I'd like to see what the cuts would look like with that number. I think that's it. I think that's truly a level funding. I understand what you're saying. I understand, but that's where the default budget is. That's right in that area. And I'd like to see what the cuts would look like then, and I'd like to see what the impact is.
Jim, and then Rob.
I would like to take a chance here to deal with some of the questions as they've come up, kind of one at a time. I understand that, going back, I think, to Lisa first, talking about the 1.546 million, roughly, whatever that figure is. What the budget, the Finance Committee has done here was, at the last meeting we had, we went in there and looked at all the different proposed scenarios from the administration, and there were many of them at that dollar amount. Our charge in that case at the last meeting was to deal primarily with the 1.5 million. That was what our purpose was there. That's why the administration came in with, I guess, maybe 8, something like that, different possible scenarios. If you actually look at the number of possible scenarios here, if we did the squares here, when they came in with the first one, which was 8 or 9, and if they'd come in with 8 or 9 possible scenarios on each one, we'd have been up to 60 to 70 different possible scenarios. I think the Finance Committee made an effort here. It's not, I understand it's not going to satisfy everybody. Some people think that we should be spending or budgeting more money. Some feel we should be budgeting less. But the Finance Committee of the school board has an obligation, at least on the number of years that I've been here, to try to deal with both sides of the issue. The Budget Committee, their purpose is to deal with the budget. The education part of it, we have to deal with, but we also have a responsibility for the finances. And this is a delicate situation that quite often a lot of school board members don't want to deal with. They feel that they're just on the school board to deal with educational parts of the budget. If there weren't, and in a lot of cases in this state, there are school boards that don't have budget committees, and their responsibility is to deal with the budget. My purpose on the Finance Committee has always been to try to take an objective look at both sides of the issue and come up with what's the best recommendation going forward, which is reasoned and thought out. And I think in this case, we have come up with something somewhere in the middle. It's not going to satisfy everybody. I know there are people who want to cut more, and I know there are people who want to cut less. I feel, in response to Nick's comment, I think that from this school board's position would be irresponsible. I think it would be irresponsible to go to the Budget Committee in the next week and not come up with at least some reasoned cuts and where we're going to make them and how we've thought them out. On the other side, for the Budget Committee to come in and look at some of the proposals that were made, with the first proposal that came in by the administration, looked at, what was it, Lisa, 4.6 million? The one big cut, the biggest one was, I believe, 4.6 million.
4,641,000.
Right, 4.6. So, you know, that on the other side, and the Finance Committee looked at that and basically put that out the window because we said that's irresponsible from our standpoint, from what we think is necessary to keep this district going educationally. So I believe we have a responsibility to both sides. But I don't believe that this, you know, if we take a position way off on either side, we're going to get hammered by one side or the other. And we can say we can go forward to the what used to be the annual meeting, the deliberative session now. But if we go forward there, that people haven't seen it here very often, but that budget could be cut drastically. And there's a lot of people out there that are hurting, particularly in the tax situation this year. If we go forward there and we don't come forward with some reasoned cuts, we're going to face the probability that we're going to have bigger cuts, and then we'll be in a situation that I don't think anybody in this board is going to want to face. So I think we've got a reasonable suggestion here. And I'm also going to say that the two proposals that are given here, basically, those are a recommendation from the Finance Committee to the board to try to present to the Budget Committee to have them take a look at as their primary focus. That doesn't mean that they have to accept it. It means that we're recommending that, having looked at the number of different scenarios that we've been presented with, we feel that these are the two best to solve the problem.
Rob? Number of meetings ago, I asked about 5 and 10-year plans and how they, you know, where those were at and if we could make those public. So, but I guess the reason I bring that up is in reference to this year's budget, and I appreciate all the work that the Finance Committee has done and everyone else for that matter, because it is a very difficult subject. But if we simply just look at cutting for this year, this problem will present itself for next year. So my question then becomes, how are we interfacing the decisions or the recommendations that we're making now with what's coming down the road? You know, we have warrant articles for asbestos removal and this and that. And so I'm curious as to why we haven't heard much more about the health of our, excuse me, the health of our facilities, as the two most expensive costs as a district that we have are personnel and facilities, right? Why haven't we heard more about that? I heard someone spoke earlier about there's a report out there that we had too many buildings. I've never seen it. I'm sure it exists. And I'm not in favor of necessarily closing buildings, but I guess my question becomes, if you're making a financial plan, you're not just doing it to get through the day. You're doing it with insight as to what's out there years down the road and taking that information and using it to make the appropriate cuts or increases, for that matter, on what you're doing. So that would include the health of the buildings. I know we had a meeting not too long ago where we talked about the amount of students and how we track that. And is the district growing or is it decreasing? So I'm curious about that, because that would all interface with, how you make a plan so that what you do this year doesn't have to be reversed again next year.
We had in the Finance Committee, we had lengthy discussions about that very issue. And what we were suggesting was that we come up with and develop basically a 5-year plan. But the reality of the situation right now is we are facing, from the standpoint of what we are looking at right now, warrant articles and a budget which is being proposed for this year. And so we have to deal with this, but the recommendation really was to deal with this right now as the situation that we're facing, but basically to propose that we develop and put together a 5-year plan. There were several suggestions. I know Phyllis made several of them in committee where there was a recommendation to try to get a group on this board to take a look at a number of different possibilities going forward for the next 4 or 5 years.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. I would love to hear an extensive report from our facilities folks about the health of our facilities. I'd like to hear that now. Because maybe, I know there's been some speculation about closing Gilsum. Maybe that's not the school to close. Maybe there's another one that's in a state of disrepair that down the road is going to be so expensive to cut. And we could, I have a hard time when our job is, and I'm the new guy, right? But our job is to protect and promote the best education we can for our kids. And we're cutting teachers and we're putting kids potentially in multi-grade classrooms. I can't support that.
Scott?
So to take this in a slightly different direction, the motion on the floor, as I understand it, is to forward these two budget proposals as recommendations to the Budget Committee. I want to focus on that word for a moment. When I look at these two plans and I look at the minutes from the last two Finance and Facilities meetings, I don't see enough detail that explains to me which positions we're talking about cutting. I see reference to certified positions elementary, certified positions secondary, etc. But I want to understand what services would we no longer be providing? What subjects will we no longer be teaching? If it's electives, if we need to, combine classes, what have you, I want to understand, not names, not specific people, but I think we need to be upfront with the community about what educational opportunities will be taken away if we were to make cuts of any type. So what I would ask is that we not forward these as recommendations. We can certainly pass the information as things we've discussed. But to Eric's point about asking for further work, with any budget we look at from here forward, I would like to see itemized positions so that we understand what we would be losing. More detail, please.
Yeah, Lisa and then Bob.
I want to address what Rob was asking, and also Phyllis, you've asked for us to put together a group to study for the future, do a 5-year plan. And I have that motion drafted. I can't bring it up right now under this discussion because it doesn't pertain to this particular topic that we're voting on.
Okay, Bob, we'll come back to you.
Yeah, I really cannot support forwarding any of these to the Budget Committee. I very much agree with Nick, to some extent Eric, Rob, and Scott. They have larger classes, they have multi-grade classrooms, cuts in staff, cuts in extracurricular programs. We have had a lot of cuts in this district already, and this is going too far. Now, I'm going to ask Jane to help me a little bit here, but I live in Swansea, so my taxes went up 14%, and I understand the Troy's went up 17%. But I believe that happened at a time when this school's budget actually went down between $500,000 and $300,000. What was that number, Jane?
The budget last year actually went up. The biggest difference that affected your taxes is what I've tried to tell you before. You had two items that were your big ticket items. $400,000 reduction in adequacy. Your adequacy is going down because you don't have the same number of students, and it's also going down around the state because everybody's students are dropping. Oh, and stabilization, thank you. The other big piece of that is your surplus at the end of the 2015 year was $2.1 million. The end of last year was 1.2 million. So that means there was $900,000 less going out to reduce your tax bill. That's going to cause an increase. Your taxes are still lower than they were 6 or 7 years ago. At least mine are, and I'd say I'm pretty average here in Swansea.
But that year-to-year increase was modest, wasn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So
We've actually, warrant to warrant, taking all items on your warrant into account, we went up 1 year. I think it was in 2011-12, and we have been steadily going down until last year when we had a very small increase in that number.
Anything
So-
further?
So I just cannot support additional cuts this year. I'm with Nick on this.
Okay, Phyllis?
Yeah. I think it's always risky, and we're in a tough place, no matter where we are. None of us enjoy this. But I really think when you're looking and you're on the budget committee and you just look at the dollars, you don't see this. You don't see what we're seeing. And that's only $1.5 million. If they decide to say $3 million, this already is going to hurt. And I think my feeling was to have a meeting was to everybody to get on the same page and say, that's what $1.5 million. This is going to hurt.
Mm-hmm.
And I know what their job is, and I know what our job is, but I think communicating and seeing, this is reality. This is real. There is, I think, the energy things that we've done a lot of things to bring the budget down, but they're only Band-Aids. And I do think a long-term approach. And I also think being squeaky wheels, because the state is not helping us either. They're making our situation worse yearly.
Karen?
The big reason I'm in favor of sending these worksheets forward is because of the listed out positions. I feel if we say a number and go to a meeting, we're going to hash out all of this again, versus if we just have this itemized list from these two worksheets, we'll actually have talking points with the budget committee. If this motion fails, or maybe it should be amended, but if this fails and we have a joint meeting with the budget committee, I would be concerned with how that conversation would go, because we wouldn't have some sort of direction. Like Phyllis said, they just see the number, they don't see these itemized positions.
Okay. Nick, and then Wynn?
Yeah, when people say this is a compromise, sorry, I think it's a compromise for people who want to cut the budget. I think we could easily go and say we need additional resources for our students. There's a lot of things in our community that we don't put significant investment in. You see many of the other districts building new schools. Keene built a new $40 million school. We're looking to spend $1 million, spreading it out this year on more renovations to our school to take care of what we already have. There's a lot of things that we do here and I credit administration quite a bit with how they're able to shuffle and manage and still provide the services that they do. But to say that we have to meet them and have this $1.5 million cut, and we're looking right now for the board to recommend it, to recommend sending these forward, that's already a concession in that direction. And I think you are going to have people who don't feel that they have a vested interest in the community that would be happy to see the budget cut 50%. They're more than happy. And I think it's our duty and responsibility to push back against that. If there were excessive waste that you could show me that were extremely wasteful in our district, I would be more than happy to look at how we can better use those resources, but not just come up with a number and say, figure it out. Cut whatever services you have to make this work. That's not I don't see that as responsible for my position.
Wynn, and then Betty?
We've already cut the budget $3 million at least in the last 3 to 4 years. This is going to add another $1 million onto that, about $1.5 million. We survived. People were educated. We won't ask how well, although we do have plenty of students that go to college. We have a few left over that stay here and suffer with the next generation. If you don't have a number for tomorrow night's budget meeting, they could just well take their own number, put it in there, and that would be the number going on the warrant. We need to come up and give them a number to talk about. And this was proposed by the Finance Committee. I do not like it, cutting it this much. But we also got to remember our population has gone way down, and we cannot spend a lot more money and not review, like Phyllis just said, we need, and Lisa, we need to look at the whole picture for the next 5 years out. Because we have made these Band-Aid cuts for 3 years now. And each year we're back at the same thing, we need more Band-Aid cuts. The staff has done up and beyond what they should have had to do to make these 20 proposals, as you say. They did a lot of work. Our job is to give that budget committee a number that we feel we need to educate our students in the Monadnock Regional School District. I'm going to vote for these cuts. Come to the deliberative session. That's where it's going to count. So make your choices.
Okay, Betty?
Yes, I have no problem sharing the information on these sheets. I think more information is most of the time good. But as a former classroom teacher, in the primary grades, when you get up to 24 kids, some kid misses out every day. You just can't get to all of them. And so it's not good for kids. And so I can't support them, but I don't mind sharing them.
Jim, bless you.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's not going to be the last word here, but I do want to kind of focus in on a couple of things. I think the board needs to think seriously about this. Comment made by Nick that these were compromises, and it was by those who wanted to cut the budget. And I guess I would say to Nick, I'm a little offended by that, because I'm recommending these. I don't necessarily want to cut the budget, but I think that this board has got to, at some point, face reality. And what I'm most fearful of right now, and I think this committee, this board, better face up to it, is if we have a situation that goes into the deliberative session, and, you know, the budget can only be raised a certain amount, but it can be cut drastically. If that budget gets cut drastically, and if that goes before the public in this district, you'll get people to vote for the lower number. You can mark my words on this, because it's happened. I've seen it happen again and again and again in this district. If they're given two opportunities, it's like the situation where if the default budget is lower than the regular budget, you know which one the people are going to pick. And if the people in this district, maybe not just at the deliberative session, but if that gets put on the actual voting situation, if people propose that at the deliberative session and it comes in lower, and we've had a situation where it was voted on one time at deliberative session where somebody came in and raised it 200,000, and that got put on there and it didn't get passed because people picked the lower number. If this happens this time and we're not reasonable in what we propose, and somebody comes in and proposes a lower number and that gets passed and puts on the warrant for the public to vote on it, you can bet they're going to take the lower number. And then the district's really going to be hurting. And I'm just asking this committee to be reasonable, that's all. I think we put this forward to the budget committee and expect or hope that they're reasonable. We've got the reasons, we've got the rationale for it, I think we can justify it. But if you want to go in there, as Karen said, tomorrow night or the next week, and go in there with 89 different scenarios, which none of us are going to, as a group, will support, you know, not only will the Budget Committee perhaps make some serious cuts, which I think they're going to do anyway, but when it gets to the deliberative session, that's where the rubber's going to hit the road. And all you need to do, we haven't had a situation, everybody here should be aware, we haven't had a situation like this before. We haven't had a situation, if Troy turns out in numbers where people are losing their homes at 17% increase, and if some other areas that are losing in Fitzwilliam, that are losing and getting 14% tax situations, and people in Swansea turn out, if they turn out in the numbers and that thing gets reduced at the deliberative session, the public will vote for it in this district. And I'm very serious about that, and I don't want to see that happen.
Nick, and then Eric.
Yeah, I'd just like to offer the flip side of that. If we as a board tonight recommend that we cut the budget by $1.5 million, and that goes, and then we move forward with that with the budget committee, and then the recommended budget is $1.5 million, and the people in the public see that it's supported by both the school board and the budget committee, you're guaranteeing that you're going to have the reduction, rather than having a chance that you're going to have a reduction. So I would still hold my current position that as a school board, we should stand up for the kids, and I'm going to maintain that position. And I encourage anybody in the public, especially people that have children in the district, to come to the deliberative session, and that's where you're really going to make your voice heard.
Eric, and then Phyllis.
And just a reminder, the budget committee, these worksheets aren't going to be a surprise to them. They've seen them all. They've looked at them. It's not a surprise. We're not giving them something that they've never seen. Yeah, look, one of them has them right now.
Mm-hmm. I know. Is that it?
Yeah.
Phyllis?
Yeah. I think the word recommend scares people, and this is heavy, this is reality. I don't know if just present this information, this is the kind of cut, this is the kind of damage this amount is, which is less than what you want or less than what you have stated, but to present it at least. This is like reality, and it's like two sides of a coin. We're here for the kids and the taxpayers, everybody, and yes, they have to set a budget, but it's like a meeting of the minds. This is reality. And I think present it. Do we really want to vote this? I don't know. It looks pretty extensive.
Would you like to make a motion to amend the motion to present versus recommend and inform? I believe it were the words that were used.
Jim, would you accept that as a friendly amendment to present these so that?
Well, I think you can present it, but I think it's not necessarily responsible on the part of the board. I think the board has got to take a position somewhere. I realize nobody wants to do it. So if nobody wants to do it, just pass it off to the budget committee. I'm sure they'll do it for you.
So is that a?
That's a no, right?
Okay.
Because
you will not take it as a friendly, so would you like to make a motion to that effect?
I would make a motion to present these two plans to the budget committee for them to see both sides of this coin.
Okay, so the amendment would be essentially to remove the language of recommend, and I don't know what the second word was, or third word.
Recommend and forward.
Recommend and forward, so it would replace recommend and forward with present these two suggested budget cuts. Is that accurate?
Yes.
To the budget committee.
To the budget committee, correct. So that is a motion to amend the motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Discussion? Yeah, Nick?
Yeah, as has already been mentioned, that the budget committee has this information. So this action really is, in a way, the board saying, we recommend this. It's saying, we're going to take this path, we're going to go walk down this path with you. And I'm not going to support that.
Okay, I'm going to interject one thing with regard to the amendment in the original motion. My concern is being voiced and raised is that I believe, and I could be wrong, but I believe the original motion would fail because of the word of recommend. I could be wrong, but that is just my gut reaction, my gut feeling as to people's listening to the conversation and understanding people's stance. That's a concern, not that the Budget Committee doesn't have the information, but the board isn't at least presenting something. I too share the sentiments that many of my colleagues share, and I've said it on multiple occasions. I'm not comfortable with the cuts. It makes me ill that we're in this process, and I'll say it again, that we're 15 years behind a 5-year plan. We should have done this many, 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 many years ago. However, I think to Jim's point, we are in a reality. We have to present a budget. We have to present a budget to the people of this district. And I'm hoping between the school board and the budget committee that we can come to a suggested budget that both parties can recommend and be in support of. I don't know that's going to be the case. I hope that for our district, but that's, I don't know. We'll see what happens. I'm also concerned that deliberative could drastically change things. I also think that we may see additional cuts recommended by the Budget Committee based on their meeting tomorrow evening. Probably, closer to the 2.5 million versus the 1.5 million. So those are the realities as to the situation. So the motion as to present takes away necessarily our feeling of the strength of that recommendation. Doesn't get us anywhere closer to the solution, but I think my perception and perspective of presenting it is saying, this is a starting point for our conversation. We may not agree with it as a school board, we may not agree with it as a budget committee, we may not agree with it as a district, one way or the other. But at least here is a line in the sand that we're moving from. And then we can have that discussion thereon. So any further discussion about the amended motion?
Is the amendment for a presentation tomorrow night? Because our original motion was for the meeting on December 21st. Are we going to leave that the same way?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, it would be presented to the Budget Committee
Tomorrow night.
tomorrow evening, December 21st, which they have already received. This would be that the school board is presenting these two proposals for their discussion, which I'm sure they're going to discuss anyway, so. Rob?
Question. So, and again, this is me being new, not understanding, asking for additional information. These recommended cuts, forget the dollar value is one thing, right? But who decides the specificity of where the money comes from? I mean, is this?
That is the school board. So
This
what,
shows where the money would come from.
that is the recommendation of the administration at this point.
No, it's
Okay,
the
with that-
Finance
hold on.
Committee.
Point of information.
Well, I got to be clear about, so they've drafted 20 worksheets for us, right? We have 18 proposals. We have the default budget. I see you guys. And I see the original budget. So those are 20 proposals. Bottom line number is what the voters vote on. That is the budget. We, as a school board, take that number with the administration and say, put X amount in this, put X amount in this. We don't have enough money, we're gonna take away from this and put it over here, or we're gonna take away from that and put it there, or we're gonna take away from this and that. Those are discussions that after we know what the budget actually, what the number actually is, these are giving us information. That's how I see it. We're giving information. The administration did their due diligence to say, this X amount is, we're suggesting it come from this pot, but it may not.
So I guess to end my question, is it appropriate to talk to Lisa for one quick second? How many other districts in Cheshire County have multi-grade classrooms?
I don't know the answer to that off the top of my head. I do know that it is a common configuration, particularly in smaller schools, but I don't have any survey data from other schools in the county.
I just envision a day where my son is taught for my sons or your sons or daughters or whatever are taught for 2 years. And my sons have had some tremendous teachers. They've also had some not so good teachers who they just didn't connect with. That lasting for 2 years? Is that what we're looking at? When we say multi-grade classroom, we're talking about the same teacher 2 years.
It depends. It doesn't necessarily indicate that there's looping. There can be. In many cases, that's what happens. But it's, at this point, just simply indicating that we would combine grade levels.
Okay. Thank you.
Nick, Lisa?
Yeah, I'd just like to, a couple points here. The first is we're not Little House on the Prairie. If you look at the size of the school districts, we're by no means the bottom of the list. You know, so that's the first point. And the second point is there's been a lot of discussion. People have made the comments that administration is recommending this. Administration isn't necessarily recommending this as far as I'm concerned. They made their recommendation to us with a proposed budget. That was proposed to us of what administration feels is appropriate for educating our children, okay? So it was then certain members of the board and other members of other committees that said, hey, just thought of experiment. You guys go do all of this work to explore different ways in which we can cut. And here's some numbers. See what you can do. So I'm a little bit hesitant to make that comment that administration is recommending this. And I think it kind of passes off responsibility onto their shoulders when bad things happen from this.
I appreciate that. I misspoke in terms of saying that they recommended, they presented a number of suggestions with cuts. And we took that. But they had to come to that cut number with true education in mind of how we can do this the best way. So at the end of the day, that isn't necessarily the way it will lay out for next year's academic year, but it very well may. So.
Point of information?
Yes, sir.
Has this data already been shared with the Budget Committee by the administration?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. And the chair of the Budget Committee.
I'd like to speak.
Yes, sir.
Then I don't think there's anything for us to do here. I will not vote to recommend this to the Budget Committee or even forward it to the Budget Committee. This information is in their possession. Mm-hmm. This was an exercise, and a very serious one, by the administration in response to a board committee's request and a number. I don't think it represents the administration's desire. We got their budget the first time around. Thank you.
I'd just like to, I know there's probably more discussion, but I'd like, when we actually do the vote, I'd like a full roll call vote on this.
Absolutely. Karen?
I was just wondering, when you say the Budget Committee received it, did they receive all of these options? So both packets that Finance and Facilities did?
Right. They received what the Finance Committee received last Wednesday or Tuesday night?
Tuesday.
That's only the last 7 or 8, not the first 7 or 8.
So I just want.
Correct me if I'm wrong, did they receive the first pack too?
They may have, but I honestly can't remember.
I don't recall.
Last Finance and Facilities meeting, you had said they had not received the first packet.
Yeah.
So I think they only received the second, it sounds like.
I think that's correct.
Okay.
We have at least 3.
A through I. Showing it to us.
Okay.
Did you get 18 different options? You got 9 or whatever it is.
They're numbered as level A through
So you received, so just to be clear, because they're not at the microphones, the Budget Committee members that are present this evening only received the last 9 options of $1.5 million reduction from the proposed budget. While it may be more information than necessarily, it might behoove the Budget Committee to also receive the 8 other 9. Not that you guys can go through the exercise that the Finance and Facilities did for hours, but you might want to see all of that. That's up to the chair and you guys. Karen?
So again, my big concern, I know they received all these options, but my concern is Finance and Facilities spent a long time trying to even come remotely to a consensus. And now we're doing this exercise here. So now we're going to get into a situation where we have all of us and the entire Budget Committee, and we're looking at 9 or 18 options. I just, that's the only reason why I was more comfortable with setting forward at least just a couple. Let's focus on just these couple. It doesn't mean this group agrees with the number, but at least we have a list of things and say, look, this is what it looks like to cut that much, you know.
Nick and then Jim.
Yeah. Sometimes my wife gives me heck because I'll put 3 comforters in the washing machine. It's a stupid idea. And then the washing machine sits there and shakes off its foundation for about an hour, and then it throws an error.
Jim?
I'm still contemplating that.
Do you need me to map out the metaphor for you? Okay.
I want 18 different scenarios like we had to go through here. No,
There's 18 different errors that I think it throws at me.
Well, I think one of the things that I would, I think it's hard considering what the Finance Committee has looked at from the charge. And the last 2 board members who have spoken haven't addressed the fact that originally this board said that they wanted to have 3 scenarios presented to the Finance Committee to take a look at those and then to come back with some sort of a recommendation based on the possible different scenarios. So the reason we went in the first time and were given 3 different scenarios with 3 different variations of each one of those scenarios was because that was at the request of the board. And the request of the board was as a result of some movement by the Budget Committee that said that there would be certain proposals that would be coming forth. And so in order for this board to be prepared, they needed to be able to take a look at what the possible scenarios were and what the recommendations, not recommendations, but different presentations from the standpoint of the administration, how those would look. And that's what we've gone through. That's what the Finance and Facilities Committee has done. And it wasn't done because we wanted to do that on our own and spend that kind of time. It was done at the request of the full board. So when people say, well, this was, these are things that were looked at. No, this was at the request of the full board based on the fact that the Budget Committee had suggested that they would be presenting cuts. So we were asked to take a look at how those scenarios were and basically try to take a look at what would be the recommendations that we would make to the board, which were the best thought out recommendations, not just jump forward with 18 different ones.
Betty?
Call a question.
Okay, there's been a motion to call a question. I don't believe that we have any further germane discussion that will be presented on this motion.
Could we read the motion back? We're voting on the amendment?
We are voting on the amendment. So the amended motion, Laura, I'll allow you as our authorized scribe.
To present and forward both Level C and Level F proposals to the Budget Committee for discussion at their December 21st, 2016 meeting.
Okay, so that is the amended motion. We would vote on that. If it were to pass, we would vote on the original motion after that. So I would also have our minutes reflect the roll call vote. Jane?
Phyllis?
Yes.
Winston?
Yes.
Karen?
Yes.
Jim?
Yes.
Nick?
No.
Michael?
No.
Cheryl?
Pass.
Robert?
No.
Bob?
No.
Eric?
No.
Betty?
Yes.
Scott?
No.
Lisa?
No.
And Cheryl?
No.
5.183 yes, 7.817 no. Motion, or amendment to the motion fails.
Okay, so the amendment fails. So we go back to the original motion of to recommend and forward to the Budget Committee level C and F on the 21st. Any, Jane?
Just real quick, neither Laura nor I were able to ascertain who seconded that. We do have Jim Carney making it on behalf of the Finance Committee, but we never heard the second. We didn't see the mouse move quick enough.
I think Phyllis originally,
Yeah, I think it was.
Was it-
Phyllis.
the
Thank
original
you.
motion was from Phyllis, and I think you also, well, then you made the amendment.
Yep.
So now we're on discussion of the original motion.
I'd just like to request that when we do vote, it's a full roll call for this as well.
Okay, so the minutes will reflect the roll call vote. Laura? Okay, thank you. Jane?
Phyllis?
Yes.
Winston?
Yes.
Karen?
Abstain.
Jim?
Yes.
Nick?
No.
Michael?
No.
Cheryl?
No.
Bob?
No.
Robert?
No.
Eric?
No.
Betty?
No.
Scott?
No.
Lisa?
No.
3.305 yes, 8.939 no, 0.757 abstain, motion fails.
Okay, so the motion to recommend and forward to the Budget Committee these items from Finance and Facility has failed. It's a telltale sign, however, that the Budget Committee does have that information and can do what it wishes with it. I don't believe there are any other motions from Finance and Facilities. And the other matter that requires board action is the appointment of Mr. Colbert to the subcommittees. And that, so the chair, I'm recommending that Mr. Colbert be assigned to the subcommittees of Finance, Extracurricular, Policy, and Education. I would look for someone to make that motion or affirm my recommendation.
So move.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. Any discussion about adding him to those committees? Karen?
I'm sorry, so are those the committees Joe was on, or were those the ones that he selected?
I believe that Joe was on all those committees. But unfortunately, we went through a website modification since then, and I was unable to confirm that. However, I did consult with Mr. Colbert, and he expressed that he was interested in serving on those subcommittees. Yeah, Betty?
The STEAM ad hoc would make a request for an additional member, because Joe was on STEAM, and we have 3 members, and we have trouble making a quorum.
Did you also? Okay. And so the motion.
Can you pull one from you, though, so like 5?
No, you're the newbie. You get a low. You can essentially choose which one. They're all fairly well-staffed in terms of budget, school board members. So we would add you to STEAM as well. Is that okay with the motion maker?
Absolutely.
Okay. So moved, seconded. We're in discussion. Any further discussion about that appointment? Yes, Jim?
Yeah, I'm going to abstain on this, and I think it has nothing to do with you personally, and I'm saying that up front. But I think, as the article that was written in the newspaper, I think there's some serious questions as to the method of the appointment. I think it was improper, and I don't appreciate the fact that it was done behind closed doors and without any posting, and in non-compliance of the state statutes under 91A by all of the members from Swansea who did this without, and in contrary to the rules of our district. but it's nothing personal. Thank you.
Okay, any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions?
Abstain.
2 abstentions. I got
What was
Jim
the other
and
one?
Rob. Okay, so you are now appointed to those committees as a voting member. Other matters that require board action, I don't have any on the agenda.
I do have a motion.
We can take it up under this, so if you wish to make that motion.
Okay. I'd like to make a motion to defer school reconfiguration and form a committee to study statewide legislative issues and broad district and cross-district cost-saving opportunities while engaging stakeholders.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion?
Could you repeat that one time?
Defer school reconfiguration and form a committee to study statewide legislative issues and broad district and cross-district cost-saving opportunities while engaging stakeholders.
So the gist of this motion is to create an ad hoc committee that would look at essentially this long-term plan of district configuration and working with state on financing. That's in synopsis as to what that motion is.
What were the first 3 words?
Defer.
Defer school reconfiguration.
I think it's inappropriate to do that until we see how the budget settles out. I think this board has a history of jumping in feet first before all the facts are in. I would be very uncomfortable supporting that until we see what this year's budget process brings us.
Okay. Karen?
I would comment in the reverse. I don't feel that we should reconfigure any school or close any school until we talk with all the stakeholders, and so I am in support. I would also suggest a friendly amendment that we include all of the towns in that committee.
I'll take that friendly.
Okay. Phyllis?
Yeah. I think the budget, it doesn't matter what happens this year. It will matter to everybody here. But we need to look at long-term solutions. And I guess my feeling is more at the state level, getting other school boards with us, because they're handing things down and we're not handling it well, and we have no place left to go. That really is going to hurt everybody here in the district.
Okay. When did you have a comment?
My memory is, I know, bad, but I believe Jane's got a plan that she's been working on for the last 2 to 3 years on CIP. And we have sort of avoided her thoughts when she says, hey, what do you want me to do with it? We haven't done anything. I think we should look at what she has already before we start from scratch.
I agree with that.
It's been since 2010 since we've had a CIP plan.
I would suggest that that would be one of the first things that this committee would do, is look at what's already been done and what Jane has.
Jane?
It's kind of putting the cart before the horse. It's a little difficult for us to tell you what you're going to do with your district buildings when you haven't decided what you're going to do with your district.
That's right.
I mean, I can give you your history and tell you where you've been, and I can tell you the immediate future. And if the district makes no changes at this point, I can tell you where we can go to keep on doing what we're doing at $1 million to $1.5 million a year. But until you decide with this committee, I mean, it's cart before the horse. Phyllis is correct. Decide where you're going to go with the subcommittee. Decide what action we're going to take with the state. And then decide, based on your educational plan, what we're going to do with the buildings. So, I mean, we can do a nice plan, and that's what we've worked with. But it's going to have to be a pretty fluid plan depending on what you do. And doing it in December is not the time to be doing it. You need to be doing it earlier, and you do need to be going to the state. And I can tell you as recently as yesterday, David Lapointe asked when the budget presentation for at least the facilities side of the state is going to be brought forward. They don't know yet. There's no date. So it's a little frustrating because we have been working on, we fully intend to go and represent Monadnock.
Okay, any further discussion on this motion? See, yeah, Bob.
I'd like to make a motion that the first three words be stricken. I am very much in favor of the committee, but I am not in favor of tying the school board's hands. So
Okay.
I'm looking for a second to strike the
I'll
first.
second that.
It's been moved and seconded. Discussion on removing defer school
Reconfiguration.
reconfiguration. Sorry, it's getting late.
So just as a point of information, the voters voted to not close Gilsum School, and the voters voted that all their schools are important. This board voted to not close Gilsum School. I had several parents actually ask me, they're like, how are we going to develop a 5-year plan if the board voted unanimously to not close Gilsum School, and 2.5 years in, we're having the discussion again, and we have the discussion yearly. So I don't think this motion binds the board's hands, because from my experience, it can be brought up again anytime, and we can't bind a future board's hands. So it's all going to change again in March. And it's really disappointing and frustrating for those members in the public who hear these things and think they're safe, that put money into their homes when they were considering moving out, but it's still continuously talked about. I'm very much against the amendment. I think it's important that we actually try to stick to some sort of word and talk to the public. And I understand the plan has to be fluid, but let's put some effort into the positive end of things and see if we can draw more kids into the district. Let's see if we can work at the state and get more funding. Let's give it a try instead of continuously bring things like this up.
Okay, again, we are on discussion of the amendment. So, Nick?
Yep. I'm in favor of leaving them in because I think when you do that, especially in a public setting like this, when you remove those words, it does cast a lot of uncertainty and variability into that. As Karen said, if we're in a position where we have to make cuts or we have to do something, you can overturn anything that the board has done previously. But by the motion that Lisa made, it kind of casts a sense of confidence into our member towns that affirms both their overwhelming support for maintaining the Gilsum School, as well as the parents that are here tonight that are probably, for each parent here, there's probably 10 parents or more at home that have similar feelings that may not have been able to come. So it allows the board to, especially when you're trying to bring new students in, if you have a school that's up in the air of whether or not you're going to keep it open or keep it closed, that's a certain variability that parents aren't going to just latch on to. And if it's one of the goals of the board to increase tuition at that school, then I think you need to consider this carefully.
Okay, any additional discussion with regard to the amendment?
I just have a question for Lisa. Lisa, were you talking more than just, because I wasn't even thinking of Gilsum School, I was thinking of looking at all our schools and seeing, were you referring just to Gilsum?
So this would defer
Any
changing any grade from Mount Caesar to Cutler to Mount Caesar. It would defer grade leveling between Emerson and Troy schools. It would defer closing Gilsum School. It would defer any sort of reconfiguration until we look at it closely to see what really makes sense, not just over the next couple of months, but over the next several years. I don't think reconfiguration is going to be a bad idea. I just think we need to do it the right way, or it's going to flop on its face because we won't have the support that we need.
Thank you.
Okay, yes?
One question for Lisa Witt. Wouldn't if the board was bound by this motion as proposed by Lisa, wouldn't this be out the window, all the work here?
Except Well, for the two that were moved forward from finance and facilities, it would limit you to one.
It would eliminate both of them?
Would eliminate one of them.
One of them, okay.
Okay.
Well,
Hold on, let me caveat that. I kind of just went on the assumption, Lisa, that you were referring to school reconfiguration as the example with Emerson and Troy. Are you also talking about multi-grade within a school? Because if that is the case, then Bob, you are correct. That would eliminate all of these.
I wasn't thinking about that.
Okay. That's not how I took it, but I just wanted to clarify.
Scott?
So I was going to bring up something similar. We do multi-grades now. I believe we pay a stipend for those teachers who teach a multi-grade. Within each building, each administrator is empowered to develop a plan that says, this year we need to combine, say, 4th and 5th grade. And I've seen examples where the administrators put that out and it's gone into effect. I've seen other years where administrators put it out and the parents have come and spoken up and they didn't like it, and the administrator has backed off and had to reconfigure other things. I don't think we want to make any kind of a motion that ties the hands of the administration to do the right things for the next coming school year.
Yeah.
So we need the right clarity on how this is being phrased.
Okay. Any further discussion on the amendment? Tim?
One of the concerns that I would have, both with the amendment and the original motion, is that when you look at all the different scenarios that we looked at in finance and facilities, and we just got done discussing all of those, there were a whole number of possible scenarios which might come up depending on actions that are taken either at deliberative session or by the budget committee. And if some cuts are made that are sizable enough, we might have to deal with either, as the term was used, consolidation or multi-grades and or combining different schools. So while I think it's a good idea, I'm a little reluctant to do it right now until after the budget situation is kind of completed this year. I think it would be great to take a look at this maybe in March and decide at that point that that's what we want to do. But this budget may just, it might preempt any sort of discussion long-term with that.
Okay, further discussion on the amendment? Nick?
Yep, as has been mentioned, the board can overturn anything or change positions later on, but I think what you have the opportunity right now to do is to take a stand as a board and say these are the things that we represent and that we feel that we want to do moving forward.
Okay, anything further on the amendment? Seeing none, we're going to take a roll call vote. Jane?
Phyllis?
Yes.
Winston?
No.
Karen?
So, I'm sorry, we're voting on the amendment to strike the first three words?
Correct.
No.
Jim?
No.
Nick?
No.
Michael?
No.
Cheryl?
No.
Bob?
Yes.
Robert?
Yes.
Eric?
No.
Betty?
No.
Scott?
No.
Lisa?
No.
3.358 yes, 9.642 no. Amendment fails.
Okay, so we're back to the original motion of defer school reconfiguration and form a committee. That is the original motion at this point.
Could you read the results again?
3.358 yes, 9.642 no.
Okay.
Okay, so we're back on the original motion. Anyone have anything additional to add to the discussion? I think we flushed this out pretty well. Jane?
Phyllis? Yes.
Winston?
No.
Karen?
Yes.
Jim?
Yes.
Nick?
Yes.
Michael?
Yeah.
Cheryl?
Yes.
Bob?
No.
Robert?
Yes.
Eric?
Yes.
Betty?
Yes.
Scott?
Yes.
Lisa?
Yes.
10.764 yes, 2.236 no. Motion passes.
Okay. I believe that would be all of the motions this evening. Yes, Scott?
So I think now that we've agreed to form an ad hoc committee,
Yes.
I would ask that the committee's first task be to bring back to the board a charter and a scope to understand what it is they're going after specifically. And is tonight the night to discuss membership?
I would have liked to say yes as to the membership, but I think it's prudent that everyone, especially given the hour, give it some thought as to your availability, the importance of this task and what you can contribute, as well as I think we also have the need to incorporate our communities, either selectmen or residents. It's a bigger conversation than just a small group of the school board. So I would like to give an opportunity to discuss that configuration and then bring a recommendation as to how that would look. And then we can address, school board membership to that. Because honestly, it's the entire district. I've been saying this for a long time. It's the entire district should all sit in a room and figure out what we're going to do for the next 3 to 5 years. But that's not feasible to get something done. So, but we got to, we have smart people on the board and in the administration that we can sit down and figure out how we can configure this so that we can, at the end of the day, actually get the work done. Okay, I believe that would be it under matters that require board action. Next order of business are matters for information and discussion. And our student representatives, are you guys still awake?
I think so.
Okay. Thank you for listening to that. And I'm sure when you joined the school board, you both said, I can't wait to go through the budget discussion and spend hours and hours on doing this. But it is a necessary part of our process, so now you're seeing it firsthand. So I turn it over to our student representatives.
Well, on that note, we're looking forward to holiday break coming up.
Thank you, Joe.
Alrighty. We had a pep rally last Friday, was Spirit Week last week. This week is Wellness Week, sponsored by the MRHS Wellness Committee. Community members as well as students from the high school and middle school and elementary school saw part of the holiday performance yesterday. Cutler, 6th graders performed their holiday show last night. We would like to invite the school community to hear our holiday sing-along Thursday afternoon at 2:15 in our multi-purpose room. Students at Emerson and Troy will also have a sing-along this week, tomorrow at Emerson, 10 a.m., and Thursday in Troy at 2 p.m. 6th graders in Troy participated in the Holiday Bagtacular poster contest, sponsored by the Surfrider Foundation. Several students received awards, and their work can be found in various Keene venues. Gilsum STEAM Academy will be having our sing-along on Thursday at 1 p.m. We wish everyone a wonderful holiday.
Thank you.
I do have one question for the board. After that long discussion, does anybody want water?
Yes, please.
I'm making a run.
We do have, Tyler, we do have the cart in the back there.
Yeah,
for
that's
everybody,
where I'm going.
Thank you, Tyler. I was wondering where that
We're saying we're long-winded. We deserve it.
He was prompted a little bit.
That's a good job.
Can you please, I think there's some thirsty people out there.
Texted. We don't use sign language anymore.
No. So thank you, student representatives. We'll move on. Our superintendent.
My report is brief this evening. As folks are aware, at the last school board meeting, the board did vote to accept the retirement of the principal at Monadnock Regional Middle High School, Linda Callagher. And so as a result, we'll be moving into the principal search process. And in accordance with board policy, we do need at least one board member who would like to be a part of that committee. Jeremy Rathbun, our interim director of curriculum instruction and assessment, and Catherine Woods, our director of student services. I've asked them to co-chair putting together the committee. And so if you have an interest, if any board member has an interest, I think, Michael, you and I talked about whether we need to point or if we can gather, just as you did with the ad hoc committee. If you have an interest, you can let me know, and I can pass that along. And then if we have more interest than we have space, we can see how we make those determinations. But my goal is to, as soon as we get back from the holiday break, we will be putting a posting for the position. My goal is to have that posted by January 9th, and Jeremy and Catherine will get the committee moving shortly thereafter. The only other piece of information I have, and Michael's already alluded to this, I will be out of the office from December 22nd, returning on January 3rd. Doing my annual trek throughout most of the New England states, and so I apologize, I will not be able to be at the joint meeting on the 28th. I'll be somewhere in northern Vermont. And the only other last item, we will have need for a non-public under B this evening.
Thank you. Moving on to the business administrator's report.
I'll also try to be brief. We have, for the last week and a half, I think I might have informed the board, our external auditors have been in. So if I look a little frazzled, they left today and I celebrated at 5 o'clock. I also have what they call their fraud questionnaire, and I will hand this out. You guys saw this last year. There was a lot of debate as to who should write it up, and it was determined that the business administrator would write it up and the board would review it because the board didn't know what the issues would be. As a result, I have done that. I will pass this around. The auditors have requested to talk to at least one, if not two, members of the board. My suggestion would be the board chairman and the finance chairman. Seem like the most logical, too. I will find out when they can be back to have that discussion. But for the whole board, I will hand this out for you to review, give any opinion, comments, whatever. I can certainly flesh it out, but the important piece is that they talk to members of the board this time.
Okay.
Okay. That's it.
I think that's an appropriate recommendation to have them talk to myself and our finance facilities chair. So unless there's any objections to that, we'll move forward with that recommendation. Anything further?
I don't think so right now.
Okay. Yes.
Under the administrator's report, can we have an amount of money that was that's currently involved in the teacher's situation? Is there an amount of money, a specific amount of money?
Approximately $384,000.
384.
I think so, if memory serves. I haven't looked at it in a while.
Okay. Anything further? So moving on, I will try to also be brief in the board chair report. First order of business that we'll do, kind of do these in not in chronological order in my sheet, and some of them we've already addressed. But the first piece is to inform everyone that on January 3rd, barring no snow, if we do have snow, it'll be on January 4th. We're having the dedication to the gymnasium in memory of Paul Breckel. Many of you, certainly the board should be aware of that, but members of the public should be also aware of that dedication will be happening on the third snow day of the 4th. There will be a spaghetti dinner from 5:15 to 5:45. If you plan on attending that spaghetti dinner, our food services director requests that you RSVP so that we can ensure that we have enough food for that. The dedication will then be conducted in between the boys JV game and and the boys varsity game on that evening approximately at 6:30. I would recommend that we postpone or delay the start of the school board meeting until approximately 7:30 to allow all the board members that wish to attend that dedication to be able to be present. And then we would start our school board meeting at 7:30. We should be done approximately at 7 o'clock, but knowing that some things happen, you can't plan the end of a basketball game. Just doesn't happen.
I was just wondering, did we get the sound system figured out for the dedication?
We're working on it. Hopefully it will be sorted out by then. So that's the dedication. Want to let everyone know and invite all the board members and any members of the public that wish to attend, please do so. Sherry?
Extracurricular is scheduled that.
Yeah, we'll have to deal with that. I think extracurricular being there.
I already sent an email out.
I saw it. So we'll. Excuse me. Moving on. I have to bring forward the issue of using social media in communicating in the public. And a concern that I have that either board members, members of town select boards, and general public may be using social media as a means of sharing information and communicating. You have to be very careful that you don't violate the open meeting law. So I share that as I have witnessed that communication. I'm not saying it's good or bad. I'm just saying that information has been shared and by a variety of peoples in the community. It's always a challenge because we have many people in the community. They want to communicate and they're using social media. It's a great tool, but this is a place where our law hasn't caught up with our society, the way we communicate. So I just share that and also make people aware that what you put out on social media may come back to individuals that you may not want to see, have that information be seen. So it happens. And I know I share this with my own kids, and I share this with any students that I talk to. You never know what that person's going to see. Just because you delete it doesn't mean it's gone. And that's on all forms of social media. So I caution individuals in the public. Also, yeah, Bob?
Your reference to the open meeting law, is that the possibility of a quorum existing in an electronic forum?
It could. It certainly could. Yeah. It could be board members, it could be select boards, it could be any elected body that are communicating in a dialogue that potentially could have a quorum. It could also just be plain not being able to provide information in a public setting. So I just share that because it's there. Yeah, when?
Yeah, that's a reminder that there's some right-to-know law changes coming January 1st.
That is correct.
So we need to be aware as board members what they're going to be. So most of us already have heard rumors, but we need to take a look. And there's a workshop coming up soon in Concord in January, if anyone's interested, to go and learn about the right-to-know laws.
Yep. Thank you for bringing that up. So this next item that I want to talk about is addressing our superintendent and school board members. Someone brought this up in public comments about having respect. That goes for everyone. It goes from our public to our administration. It goes parents, students, general public. It also goes board members out and people in. It's not okay to be disrespectful. It's okay to not agree. And I want to be clear about that. Because when foul language is used, you're being disrespectful in your approach, it doesn't help your situation. You could be right to the nth degree, but your approach may not translate that into a positive message. So I want to bring that up because it disturbs me when I hear stories of people disrespecting others in our district. It's okay to disagree, but it's not okay to be rude. So, and the last item I want to talk about is we have a fabulous public that have made passionate public comments. I hope you come to the Budget Committee meeting tomorrow. Yeah, it's 2 meetings in a row. But the fact is that, I've said this before, many of us have said this, we're given a budget that we have to then provide educational services with. There will be many, many conversations tomorrow evening of the Budget Committee. They may choose a budget, one side or the other, we don't know. And we have to react to that. So if you have things for them to know, please go and make a public comment. Go share your comments, questions, concerns to the full body, because that is where it is. Everyone needs to hear what you guys have to say, not just to us.
Mike, sorry to interrupt. Could you give out that information for the meeting tomorrow, for the time and location?
Yep, the Budget Committee meeting, I believe, is in the library at 7 o'clock. And there is a default meeting at 5:30.
Correct.
And I believe that's in either the annex or the former principal's conference room. I don't recall where they're going to meet.
Library also.
Okay, so they're meeting also in the library. But it behooves the public to also share those public comments. Because we hear it, and unfortunately, sometimes our hands are tied as to what we can do, and we do the best we can with what we're given. So that is it that I have under the board chair report. Are there any committees that wish to report? Because I know some of you met, so if you have anything to add. Education?
So education met last week. It was a very healthy discussion on student retention. We got some information about the elementary schools, retention in the elementary schools. It was 7 students last year. There was quite a bit of discussion on the pros and cons of doing it. I believe the superintendent, I received some documentation on some studies that she says supports many of her. That went out to all the school board members?
Correct.
Okay. I'm sure if anybody else would like to read that, just contact one of your school board members and they can supply it to you. That was the majority of it.
Any other committees that wish to give a brief report? Okay, I only have that CRC did meet tonight. The chair of CRC wasn't present, so I served in his absence. Just a couple things that the alumni page on our Facebook page, or our Facebook group, has nearly 4,500 people. So that is used as a forum. I'm not an alumni of Monadnock, but I am in that group, and it's an active, positive venue of sharing a variety of information. Certainly, if you're an alumni, please join it. If you're just it's open to the public. The other piece was with regard to the sign that's in front of the high school. We were not sure who was responsible for that, but wanted to make an invitation as to whomever it is or individual parties that they may attend the next CRC meeting. So just to have some dialogue as to how we can be more proactive in using the sign. So that's from CRC that met this evening.
The electronic side?
Yes. I think, is that all the reports from the committees? Okay. Moving on, the consent agenda, action on the manifest. Does anyone have a motion with regard to the manifest?
I move the manifest in the amount of $1,281,318.67.
Is there a second? Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Got the money? Groovy? Any further discussion? Seeing none. Jane?
Phyllis?
Yes.
Winston?
Yes.
Karen?
Yes.
Jim?
Yes.
Nick?
Yes.
Michael?
Yep.
Cheryl?
Yes.
Bob?
Yes.
Robert?
Yes.
Eric?
Yes.
Betty?
Yes.
Scott?
Yes.
Lisa?
Yes.
13 even.
Okay. Next order of business is the approval of the December 6th minutes. Is there a motion to approve the December 6th minutes?
So moved.
Been moved, is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion?
Public, correct?
Public minutes, correct. Seeing no discussion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? All right, ayes have it. Moving on to the non-public minutes of December 6th at 9:55.
I would move those minutes.
Been moved, is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions?
Abstain.
Okay, one abstention. Setting next meeting's agenda. Obviously, we have the budget and the warrant articles. Are there items that any board member wishes to have on the next meeting's agenda? Nick?
Should we have something related to the formation of the subcommittee?
Yep, thank you.
And then also an update on formation for the committee, whoever's appointed for the search for the new principal for the high school.
Yep. Anything else?
Is there anything on recurring motions for last meeting, first meeting of the year?
I don't recall.
Yeah.
We'll check it.
You'll actually need to approve your warrant articles and the wording to move them forward for the public hearing.
Yep, so we'll have a motion to approve warrant articles. And hopefully we'll be also, well, we'll have to approve the budget unless we have a special meeting after the meeting on the 3rd. Okay. So those will be two under motions of approving the proposed budget and approving the warrant articles, which budget's in the warrant articles, so technically we're just doing the warrant articles. Anything else? Okay, moving on. Public comments. Any members of the public that wish to make a public comment? Yes. Again, I will set my lovely timer. If we can keep our comments, when you hear the ding, please wrap up.
I'll read them quickly. These are two more Melissa Divin, Swansea. These are two more parents from Gilsum that couldn't be here this evening, so they sent me their letters.
Can you identify those two members,
Yes,
please?
this one is Jen Marvel from Gilsum.
Thank you.
I have 4 children that currently attend Gilsum STEAM Academy. My oldest 2 have attended other Monadnock regional schools with bad experiences. My oldest child attended Cutler and was told in 3rd grade that she would have to stay back because she was failing in every area. We moved her to the Gilsum school and she's thriving. She's achieving grade level skills and knowledge across the board with no big issues. She's thriving because of the STEAM approach. My child in 1st grade struggles to learn because of health issues, epilepsy. Not only is her teacher absolutely amazing at taking the time to find ways to reach her, time which teachers at traditional schools I think would not be able to dedicate to one child from my experience at the other schools in the district, but she's able to learn at her speed and at her level because of the way classrooms function. On the other hand, my 2nd oldest is pretty brilliant. She's reading and doing math at least 1 grade level above her actual grade. Because of the size of the school and the STEAM approach, she gets to easily transition between her classroom and the classroom above her for the different subjects without problems, and gets to easily learn at her level and her speed. We used to live in Richmond, and one of the big draws to move to Gilsum was the school. If Gilsum STEAM Academy closed its doors, we would, without a doubt, move so that our children could attend school in a different district or look into homeschooling. I will not send my children to Cutler or Mount Caesar again. That was Jen Marvel. This person is Missy Manfield Wilkes, and she's from Troy. I'm a Title I teacher in SAU 29, and I live in Troy. We moved up to Monadnock region a year ago in October after having made sure to research Gilsum School for over a year. 2 of my children attend GSA, and both excel academically. My son told me that if GSA closes, he begs me to be homeschooled. He does not want to attend Troy at Emerson or be in bigger classes. If GSA closes, we will not stay in the district, but we'll move. Closing a great school is not in the student's best interest. Coming from another state that has very high taxes and seeing them increase here are appalling. Board members should visit GSA or even speak to students that attend there to know how happy they are attending. No student or child should be scared and upset their school board will close their school. The opportunities they are offered at this school are amazing, and my other daughter will be starting kindergarten next year. I hope she can get a chance to become part of their happiness. And I myself would really like to take the opportunity. People have been asking questions this evening about multi-age, multi-grade classrooms, and that's how Gilsum runs. So if you want to see how it's done, come on up and see it. Littles learn from bigs, and bigs learn from littles. And it's a really wonderful way to see education happen. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other member of the public that wish to make a public comment? Don't all fight to come up.
Good evening, Brian from Swansea. You know, I can't help but wonder what the conversation about the Gilsum school would be if STEAM was in every school in the district. I, for myself, speak on behalf of maybe 96% of the rest of the parents in the district that have parents or students that would like to see STEAM in the rest of the district. So I guess my question would be, how much is it going to cost, and when can we expect to see a plan, a meaningful plan that has any traction on whether or not we believe it can happen, when it's going to happen, how much it's going to cost? Because I guess my question would be, maybe consolidation in that conversation would be a little different if we weren't talking about steamrolling, the STEAM concept into the ground. To me, I support STEAM. I'm sure the other 1,575 students in the district might be interested in it. But the fact of the matter is, they don't have that opportunity right now. We can't fit 1,500 students in Gilsum. So I guess that's my question for the board, not to tackle too many topics, but first thing up after budget, why don't we have that conversation? And I think it's about time. I hope I don't need to remind the board that the board voted to keep the Gilsum school open when the idea of the charter school was still there. The voters voted on that when the idea of a charter school was still there. That chance is not there anymore. So I, for one, believe in, everyone's word meaning something, but I think there's some potential for the voters to have been misled in that conversation a couple of years ago. Thank you.
Thank you. I wanted to
I wanted to make a public comment, if you didn't mind, Mike.
Yeah, absolutely. I just wanted to address the concept of STEAM so that the public understands this. The board passed at our last meeting the definition of STEAM. So I would invite the members of the public to read that. It was a step into having the district embrace what STEAM is. It's a concept. It's not a place. So they're doing it in Gilsum, which is great. But so, any other members of the public that wish to make a public comment? Yes, I have two. We'll get you up front.
Hi, Paula Royal from Swansea again. It's more of a question. I heard mentioned a couple of times that the board wants to go to the state about the inadequate funding that the districts are now receiving. What can we as parents do to help you in that effort?
Talk to your representatives.
Vote.
Attend the committee.
Also, my hope is that that committee will become aware of when public hearings are being held. So if there's a place that we need support and we can appear into public, not just public comments, but there's a place to put input and ways to reach out to the Board of Education if that's necessary. So yeah, hopefully we can pull that together and let you know.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Kaufman?
Good evening, Dan Kaufman from Swansea. Couple of quick points. Just as a point of reference, both of my kids came through Cutler and Mount Caesar. Pretty proud of how they're doing. Pretty proud of the teachers that they had in both of those locations. Just as a point of reference. I think these two cats right here that are doing a pretty good job came from those areas as well, if I'm not mistaken. Where you have?
I came from Emerson.
So, but at any rate, we pretty happy with that experience. Aside from that, these discussions, okay, this isn't about putting kids in a spot, all right? This is about grown-ups making tough decisions. These grown-ups making tough decisions. Planning, thinking, acting, okay? And this evening, I come to the board meetings prior to budget meetings, which I'm a member of, you guys know. We have a budget committee meeting tomorrow night, to kind of see and get a sense for where are the heads at, where are the greatest needs. And I try to, kind of equate that to, so what do I think regarding how the budget for the next year ought to be? What am I hearing people scream about when I read the notes or when I come to this session? Right before, we're at the line here, guys, and I did not learn anything about those most recent 9 proposals. So I'm a little bit frustrated about that. My advice, I'm happy that we're going to have a committee to talk about, I'll call it good old-fashioned restructuring. Okay, it's time to talk about restructuring. As a reminder, we've lost over 30% of enrollment in 10 years. Over 30% enrollment in 10 years. That may be a new stat for some folks. It may be that you forgot that. In the last 5 years, it's like 13%. There's some decimals in there, but I'm sure you'll grant me that it's about 13% in the last 5 years enrollment. You can't say we're not going to do anything. We can't say let's not change the budget numbers. Any reasonable person that's an adult that understands budgeting understands that. So I would urge this body to treat that as priority number 1. Strongly urge you. We've spent 40 grand to help somebody, get somebody to help us understand that, and that dust in the wind, right? We don't talk about those things anymore. We don't even pick it up and refer to it as a good or bad idea. I won't say whether I think it's great or not great, but we don't even refer to it as a great or not great example. I would suggest that you guys don't even know where your copies of that are if you're an existing board member. So my final point will be, if this group doesn't have a plan for when we get to X level of student enrollment, therefore we do take Y action, then what the heck are you working on? That's my comment. So to me, I'd take every agenda in the small subcommittees and so forth, tear them up and work on one until you come up with what the plan is. It's the only thing that matters. We need to stop this bickering. Okay? I don't want my taxes to go up. I understand that they might. But I don't want these teachers worrying about contracts, which they are right now. And as I said to you last year when I appealed, I don't want to be between my kid and a teacher. And that's where I'm at. Again, without that strategy, we get down to X, therefore we do Y. Then I don't know what you're doing. Don't worry about the small stuff. You are board of executives. Worry about the big stuff and use this team of people to get there. They'll help you, but if you handcuff them, you're not going anywhere. So please consider that as we move into this critical time of the year and as we go forward with what the coming season will look like after we go through the new year. Thanks for your time.
Thank you. Any other members of the public that wish to make a public comment? I know there's I believe a couple school board members that wish to make a public comment. I would ask that you go to the podium if you wish to do so.
Oh, do you want me to, or?
Yeah, if you don't mind, just to make it formal. We'll put you through the same pains that everyone else has to.
I just first wanted to thank those that came out tonight to speak on behalf of the Gilsum School. I also wanted to say, in light of everything people say, we need to take into consideration that those people are saying it because they're worried that the school is going to close, and they're passionate, and they're happy they found something that works for their child in this district. I know of Gilsum residents where it goes the other way. And I feel that school choice is important for that. I feel often when parents come to the meeting and they say all these great things about why this program's working for their child, they don't realize that there's Gilsum residents that go to other schools, and we're a school district where not every town has their children going to necessarily just one school. When it doesn't work, we have options right now. And if we were talking about another school, we'd have parents coming in saying the same success stories. So I don't see these comments as putting any other school down so much as it is the success and good things we're doing for them. So, thanks.
Thank you. All right, any other board members that wish to make a public comment?
Yep, I was going to, but Karen covered quite a bit of what I was going to say.
All right, good. All right, seeing no other public comments, we do have the need to go into a non-public. So at this time, I will look to, I'll give you 7 minutes. We'll look to adjourn, we'll look to recess for approximately 10 minutes. Thank you everyone for coming. I wish everyone here and in TV land happy holidays and a safe and prosperous new year. We'll keep trudging along.